everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to be covering the grammar pattern that is basically just a noun or a verb plus the word toori to mean in accordance with noun or in accordance with verb. And so this word that we're using here, toori, is going to translate to something along the lines of in accordance with, following, just as, exactly like, the way, and etc. And what we're going to do with it, like the title implies, is we're going to plug it in right after a noun word or a verb word in order to express that the following statement that will occur right after it is going to be in accordance with, again, the verb or the noun. And so moving on to the grammatical points of this pattern, when we're using it with a verb word, the verb is of course going to have to be in its plain form. That's usually a condition in grammar patterns. In the case of nouns, when we're using this grammar pattern with nouns, we're going to have the particle no appear right after the noun and right before the word toori to basically employ the noun of a noun modification. Additionally, for nouns, when we're using this grammar pattern with nouns, we can also use toori as basically a direct suffix to the noun word used. And in this case, we're not going to use the particle no at all. The word toori is going to follow right after the noun word, and it's also going to be changed in its pronunciation from toori to doori, basically the do instead of to, and the reason behind this is called rendaku or sequential voicing. So look that up if you're curious. If you're not so much inclined to look it up and know why, then you can just take this at face value and know that. And so now the last thing worth mentioning is the particle ni that is in our construction here. It's in parentheses because it is in fact optional. We have the particle ni in many grammar patterns, and it's being used to basically describe a verb action, but in this case it's going to be an optional particle. And that's going to be in both cases, whether you're using this grammar pattern with verb words or with noun words, the ni is still going to be optional. And so with all of that elaborated upon, now we can go into some example sentences and get a feel of how this is going to work out. So for our first example sentence, we're going to do a really simple line, and it's actually a pretty a famous or well-known line from the anime Death Note, and it's just the two-word sentence Keikaku doori. And so this is going to be an example of the grammar pattern being used with a noun word and being used as a suffix to the noun word, in that we don't use the particle no, and we're not going to even use the particle ni because we're not going to really say anything afterwards either. We're just going to say this line, which is going to translate to basically according to plan or just as planned. So let's break down this really short sentence. And first up we have keikaku, which is going to be the noun word for plan basically, and then we simply invoke our grammar pattern here, the suffix version of it. So we have doori right after keikaku, and so doori is going to mean just as or following or in accordance with, and so we combine that with the word keikaku, which means plan, and this will just be a really simple statement that translates to just as planned, literally. And of course it's kind of grammatically odd that there's nothing following after that. You don't know what was just as planned or what is just as planned. This is a pretty contextual line, and it's just implying basically that the things that were realized or said before this sentence are the things that are just as planned. For our next example sentence with this grammar pattern, we actually have another line that is really commonly said in even shows like anime and whatnot. And so for our line, we have the simple sentence, Jooji Washington ga言う通りだ. And so what this line is going to translate to is just basically, it is just as George Washington says. So let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up we have Jooji Washington, which is going to be basically George Washington. We have the ga marking George Washington as the subject. We have the verb u, which means to say, and it's just going to be in its dictionary form here. Then we're going to use the grammar pattern here, so it's going to be modifying this verb u, which is in its dictionary form, which is a plain form, so this is going to work out okay. So we have toori. Then we're simply going to end the sentence with a da, because this is going to be, again, just like the first example, one of the things that is contextual. It's going to be implying that something that has already been brought up in this conversation before the sentence was uttered is the thing that is just as George Washington says. So again, this sentence will just basically translate to, it's just as George Washington says, and it's kind of a standalone statement, and the Japanese, once again, is Jooji Washington ga言う通りだ. Okay, so for the rest of our example sentences, we're going to be using this grammar pattern with lines that actually are more complete than the ones we've done so far. And so for our first one of that nature, we have Sensei ga oshiete kudasatta tori ni mondai o toitara tema ga habukemasu. And what this line is going to translate to is, if you solve the problem the way our teacher showed us, you'll be able to save time. So let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up we have sensei, which is going to be teacher basically. We have the ga marking the teacher as the subject right there. We have the word oshieru, which is going to to be conjugated into its te form, so it becomes oshiete. Then onto that te form, we're going to add the verb kudasaru, and we're going to conjugate kudasaru into its plain past form, so it becomes kudasata. So oshiete kudasata is a grammar pattern that we haven't covered yet. It's basically the giving and the receiving verbs. So right now we'll just say that oshiete kudasata is going to translate to did the favor of teaching, and then I'll just more naturally translate to just taught in general. And so we have this, and kudasata, it's going to be in its plain form, so we can use the grammar pattern now. So we're going to add toori right after kudasata. And so far we have sensei ga oshiete kudasata toori, and this is going to translate to the way that teacher taught us, basically. Or in accordance with how teacher taught us, or something along those lines. Then right after toori, we're going to actually add the particle ni this time around, just because we want to. And then now we're going to finish the rest of the sentence. And first up we have mondai, which is going to translate to problem. And this can mean actual, like a really big dilemma, or it can mean something like a test problem or a homework problem or something like that too. And in this case, that's what it's going to be, basically, a test problem or a homework problem. We're going to have the particle o marking the mondai as the direct object of the verb that's about to come. And so the verb we have is toku, which is going to mean to solve, basically. We're going to conjugate it into its tara form to be hypothetical. So toku turns into toitara, and so that'll become if you solve. Then now we finish the sentence. What's going to happen if you solve in accordance with the way the teacher taught us? Well, tema ga habukemasu, and that is going to be a phrase that means to save time, basically. We have the word tema, which is going to basically translate to time. We have the ga as the direct object marker, but this is going to be ga instead of o because we're going to be using a potential form verb. Then we have the verb habuku, which means to save, basically. We're going to turn it into its potential form, so it becomes habukeru. Then we're going to change that into its polite form, so habukemasu. So tema ga habukemasu is going to be can save time, and so we put that with the rest of the sentence, and all together, once again, we have the line sensei ga oshiete kudasata toori ni mondai o toitara tema ga habukemasu, as if you solve the problem the way the teacher taught us, then you can save some time. And now for our last example sentence, we have the line video no setsumei no toori ni shita hou ga ii to omoimasu. And what this line is going to translate to is just basically, I think it's best if you do it the way the video explains, basically, or in line with the explanation in the video. So let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up we have video, which is going to be basically the katakana version of the word video. We have the particle no invoking the noun of a noun modification here. So right after no we have the word setsume, which is going to translate to explanation. So video no setsume is going to be the video's explanation, or the explanation of the video. We have the particle no right after setsume because setsume is a noun, and we're going to be using setsume with the grammar pattern, so we put no right after the noun, and then we add toori, and now we're going to put ni right after toori as well, just because we want to, even though it's optional. Then now we're going to invoke our grammar pattern that is the ta form of the verb plus hou ga ii to mean it is better to do the verb, or it's best to do the verb, something along those lines. We've done a video explaining that grammar pattern, so check out the ta form of the verb plus hou ga ii if you need a refresher on that. Then we're going to end the sentence with to omoimasu, and this is basically just going to be I think blank, and the blank is going to be everything that preceded the phrasing to omoimasu. So altogether this is going to be, I think it would be best if you did it in accordance with the explanation in the video. Video no setsume no toori ni shita hou ga ii to omoimasu. And so yeah, that's how we're going to be using this word toori, which means in accordance to, following, just as, the way, etc. And we're going to put it right after a noun word separated by the particle no, or we can put it right after a plain form conjugation of a verb, or again we can put it behind a noun as a direct suffix. In that case there's no particle, but the word toori is going to experience sequential voicing and turn into doori. And we've done examples of all three of those cases, and hopefully that should be a good enough look into the grammar pattern itself and how it can be used, and show some of its most common uses, actually, as we should be able to see from the examples pretty much taken from anime, and that should also give you an idea of how common the grammar pattern itself actually is. So definitely essential to know what toori means when it's used after a noun or a verb. And yeah,